A nation's supreme leader has just been killed in an airstrike. The capital is burning. Missiles are striking military bases. Top commanders are dead. And in the middle of this chaos, fighters are moving across the mountains and pushing into Iran. But these fighters are not a country's army. They don't have a government. They don't even have a country. They are the Kurds, a nation of more than 40 million people. And for more than 100 years, they have lived without a state. Their leaders have been executed, their uprisings crushed, their alliances betrayed, and yet today, they are stepping into war again. Why would the Kurds risk everything now? Why are some of them fighting Iran while quietly receiving support from powers like the United States and Israel? Is it revenge? To understand that, we have to go back to the beginning. Most people have heard the name Kurds at least once, but very few people actually know who they are. The Kurds are one of the largest ethnic groups in the Middle East. After Arabs, Persians, and Turks, they are the fourth largest people in the region, but they hold a strange title. They are the largest stateless nation in the world. In 1920, European powers began redrawing the map of the Middle East. In the Treaty of Sèvres, something extraordinary happened. The Kurds were promised autonomy. For the first time in history, there was a real possibility of a Kurdish state, but that promise didn't last long. Turkey's future leader Mustafa Kemal Ataturk rejected the agreement, and in 1923, a new treaty replaced it, the Treaty of Lausanne. The Kurdish autonomy clause vanished. Just like that, no Kurdish state, no independence. And from that moment on, the Kurds were left divided between four different countries, a promise given and then taken away. Among those four countries, one relationship became especially violent: Iran. Millions of Kurds live inside Iran today, but the relationship between Kurdish movements and the Iranian government has been deeply hostile for decades. Part of the tension is religious. Iran is a Shia Islamic republic. Most Kurds are Sunni Muslims. Their language is different, their culture is different, and Kurdish regions in Iran are among the poorest areas in the country. Political repression has also been severe. A large percentage of Iran's political prisoners come from Kurdish communities. But the real conflict goes back much further. In 1946, something almost unbelievable happened. For a brief moment, the Kurds actually created a country. It was called the Republic of Mahabad. Located in northwestern Iran, it became the first Kurdish state in modern history. Kurdish schools opened. Their language was taught. A Kurdish government formed. For the first time, Kurds ruled themselves. But the dream lasted only 11 months. When Soviet forces withdrew their support, Iranian troops moved in. The republic collapsed, and its leader, Qazi Mohammed, was publicly executed. His body was left hanging in the town square. 11 months. That was all the Kurdish state lasted, but the memory never disappeared. For Kurds across the region, Mahabad proved one thing: a Kurdish state was possible. Then came another turning point, 1979, the Iranian Revolution. When the Shah was overthrown, Kurdish groups initially supported the revolution. They believed the new Islamic government might finally grant autonomy, but the opposite happened. Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini declared a holy war against Kurdish rebels. Within months, war broke out in Kurdish regions. Over 10,000 people were killed, hundreds of thousands were displaced, and thousands were executed without trial. But even that wasn't the end. Over the following decades, Kurdish leaders were targeted abroad. Assassinations took place in Europe. In 1989, Kurdish politician Abdulrahman Ghasemlu was murdered during peace negotiations in Vienna. In 1992, another Kurdish leader was assassinated in Berlin. A German court later concluded that Iranian officials were responsible. For many Kurds, this confirmed something they had long suspected: their movement was being systematically destroyed. But there is another side of this story that most people never hear: a secret alliance between the Kurds and Israel. In the 1950s, Israel was surrounded by hostile Arab states. Its first prime minister, David Ben-Gurion, developed a strategy called the Periphery Doctrine. Instead of relying only on allies inside the Arab world, Israel would build relationships with non-Arab groups around it. One of those groups was the Kurds. In the 1960s, Israeli intelligence quietly began training Kurdish fighters. These fighters were known as the Peshmerga. The word means those who face death. Weapons were provided, training camps were established, and Kurdish forces fought Iraqi armies with Israeli support. The alliance remained mostly secret, but it lasted for decades. Fast forward to 2022, a young Kurdish woman named Mahsa Amini died in Iranian police custody after being arrested by morality police. Her Kurdish name was actually Gina, meaning life. Her death triggered the largest protests Iran had seen in decades. Across the country, a slogan spread: woman, life, freedom. The phrase came from Kurdish activists. Within weeks, protests had spread across more than 100 cities. Hundreds were killed, thousands were arrested, but the protests changed something important. They showed how fragile the system had become. Then came the next crisis: economic collapse, political instability, mass protests returning again, and suddenly, war. Airstrikes began hitting Iranian cities, military commanders were killed, missiles flew across the region, and in the chaos that followed, Kurdish fighters began mobilizing. Some groups reportedly crossed into western Iran, others prepared armed resistance. For Kurdish leaders, this moment feels historic. For the first time in decades, the Iranian government looks vulnerable, but history also carries a warning, because the Kurds have been here before. In 1975, global powers supported Kurdish rebels, then suddenly withdrew. The rebellion collapsed. In 2019, Kurdish forces in Syria fought ISIS alongside the United States. Then American troops pulled back, and Kurdish areas were exposed to attack. Over and over again, the same pattern appears: support, then abandonment. And so today, the Kurds face the same question again. Is this finally the moment their century-long dream becomes reality? Once more. Then in early 2026, everything changed. War erupted between Iran, Israel, and the United States. Israeli and American air forces launched coordinated strikes on Iranian military infrastructure. Air bases were hit, missile facilities were destroyed, explosions shook cities across the country. Reports quickly emerged that several of Iran's most powerful figures had been killed in the strikes: military commanders, security officials, senior members of the government. For the first time in decades, Iran appeared vulnerable, and that is when the mountains began to move. In the rugged Zagros Mountains, Kurdish fighters started mobilizing. Some Kurdish groups based in Iraqi Kurdistan began moving toward the Iranian border. Others activated underground networks inside western Iran. According to multiple reports, Kurdish militants carried out attacks on Iranian security positions near the border. Iranian forces responded with missile strikes and drone attacks targeting Kurdish bases across the region. Missiles fell near Kurdish-controlled areas in Iraq. Explosions were reported in cities like Erbil and Sulaymaniyah. The conflict was no longer just a war between states. Now it was becoming something much bigger, a regional struggle with Kurdish fighters caught directly in the middle. But the situation is even more complicated, because not every country wants the Kurds to gain power from this war. Turkey, which has fought Kurdish militant groups for decades, fears that a stronger Kurdish movement could ignite separatism inside its own borders. That means a strange possibility is emerging. In some scenarios, Turkey and Iran, longtime rivals, could find themselves cooperating against Kurdish forces. Alliances in the Middle East rarely stay simple, and the Kurds know this better than anyone. They have been supported by global powers before, and abandoned just as quickly, which is why many Kurdish leaders are cautious even now. They know that this moment could be historic, or it could become another chapter in a long history of betrayal. For now, Kurdish fighters are still moving through the mountains, still carrying a dream that began more than 80 years ago. The dream first declared in a small town called Mahabad, a dream of a country that has never existed. A Kurdish official recently said something that captures the entire situation perfectly: "We believe we are facing a historic opportunity." Inside that sentence lies more than a century of hope, anger, and unfinished history.